Hey, what's up guys? Darkbreaker here. Patch 3.1b is coming out pretty soon and let's get started. Patch 3.1b has arrived and brings with it a whole host of champion changes, item balancing, the return of Elemental Rift and an adjustment to Scuttlecrab. We are also setting sail and going on another adventure with our favorite Poro friends, this time to this is typo or not, Bilgewater. This will also be our last balance patch for 3.1, so we will see you back here on May 11 for patch 3.2. New modes, Elemental Rift. Oh god. Elemental Rift will return this patch in a limited game mode. As a reminder, we will be testing different versions of Elemental Rift before its release and what you play in this game. Mode might be different from what comes in patch 3.2. If this will be your first time playing Elemental Rift, read all about it in our previous patch notes. This version won't be drag and drop from our first test, but it will be look pretty similar, just with a few adjustments. After the first dragon is slain, the terrain will change. This should give you and your teammates unique gameplay opportunities earlier on. The team who slays 2 dragons will be granted one of the powerful souls. We loved hearing your feedback during our first test, so please let us know how this version feels as well. We'll also be back in patch 3.2 with a dev that will go more in depth about Elemental Rift. Skins, Marauder Brand and Marauder Graves, cool. It's coming out 28. Then accessories, new icons, new emotes, nice, okay. Laughing, Marauder emotes. Events, join the fluff, the Bilgewater, okay, now they typed it correctly. The Poros have hoisted their sails and are on their way to Bilgewater on April 29. And now let's get started with the champion changes. Blitzcrank. Previously, we intended to reduce Blitzcrank's armor since we were giving him more engage potential with his updated overdrive. Despite being in the patch notes, these changes were unintentionally not included in 3.1. We've seen the performance of the speedy golem without the armor nerfs and we don't think they are necessary, so we won't be implementing them. We've shown below what his current base armor is. So they intended to nerf him, but they forgot to do it, and Blitzcrank is not broken, so they just keep it like this and they don't nerf him at all. So the armor is staying at 50. Base stats. Next one, Darius. Darius has been an overly dominant force in the Baron lane and has been having too easy of a time accessing his Noxian Might. We want him to stay in the fight a little longer before he hits his 5 bleed stacks and starts dunking. So we're cutting back on the attack speed this Noxian fighter gets as he levels. Attack speed per level is getting reduced from 2.2 per level to 1.2%, and in total from 41% to 27%. So it's a 14% nerf at max level. Honestly, a lot of Darius players are just running Black Cleaver because you don't necessarily need the attack speed. So this might force them to go for Trinity to have enough attack speed to get the Noxian Might in those team fights. So this is definitely a solid nerf on Darius in the late game. Makes it harder for him to reach the max stacks, but I think this definitely will hurt him in the team fights later on. But to be fair, it's like a dagger or not. Wait, how much attack speed do you get from dagger? Let me check dagger. Oh, how much attack speed is dagger? It's just literally 500 gold. If you think I saw a Reddit thread where someone was determining the nerfs or the buffs in terms of gold value. So 14% attack speed nerf is like, let's see, I think it's like 500 gold to nerf. Dagger is 15%. Yeah, it's like 500 gold nerf. In terms of nerf, it's like 500 gold. So overall, if you think about it, it only applies in the late game. Like before, it's just 1%, 1%, 1%, 1%. So in the early game, you barely notice it. But in the late game, it's like 500 gold value. So not even that much. That's like if you think about the gold value. So I kind of like that threat. Next one, but usually you want to see like in percentage, like 41% to 27%. What is the decrease in a percentage? But yeah, 14% out of 41%, like 1/3 maybe. Fiora's ability to make safe trades with Lunk and shrug off damage with Repose has been a source of frustration for her sparring partners. To combat some of those frustration, we are reducing the range of her first ability while also increasing the power of her passive to compensate. So the passive vital base damage is increased from 2.5% to 3.3%, and the AD ratio is increased by 1% per 100 bonus AD. So actually a lot more damage, to be honest. If you think about it, you will have like, how much AD will you get from items? Maybe like 150? Okay, let's count some items. Let's add some items. Stark's gauge is like 50, I guess. Like a roundabout. Let's say Trinity. Trinity also getting buffed, so 25. Then you have Borg. Usually Borg gives you 20. It's not even that much. 55. Then you get maybe Death Dance. Gives you 35. Then you're almost at 100. Then Stark's gauge gives you, I guess, like 50 or something. I don't know what's the base AD of Fiora, but probably gives you around 50 more at max rank. Yeah, it's okay when you have more items, but it's not that much of a damage buff, to be fair. 1%. Yeah, it's okay. Next one. First ability. Dash range is reduced by 0.5 seconds, and search range is reduced by 0.5 as well. This will definitely hurt Fiora, but I don't know how much is 0.5 in terms of range. I think it's slightly gonna hurt her. I mean, 0.5 can be... If you think about the Yasuo buff, 0.5 more. It's definitely gonna hurt her laning phase in general, but her having a better damage output is definitely... I mean, it's a rebalance, making her early game weaker and her late game stronger, I guess. I mean, the longer the game goes and the more items you have and the more bonus AD you have, the more damage you will do, and the vital base damage is also buffed. Dash range, 0.5. I need to test this in-game, but I don't think this is necessary or nerf. It's just a rebalance, making her stronger late game and weaker early game. Jhin. They nerfed... Wait, unfortunately for other junglers, since the significant buff to Jin's 4th shot damage, he's become too good at securing and stealing objectives. So we're putting a cap on his damage. So instead of uncapped, maximum of 1000 damage on... Yeah, because I've seen like Jhin, some Jhin did like 2k on Baron. It's like, what the fuck? So 1k max right now. Kaisa. Kaisa, the new Stormracer has created some interesting build pairs for Kaisa, but it hasn't actually helped her win more games. We are giving her damage some extra consistency to make sure she can really shine in those late game team fights. And they reduced the cooldown of the third ability in the late game by 3 seconds. In the early game, no changes really, just 1 second at second rank. And then at max rank 3 seconds, which is actually a lot in the late game. So she can more often go invisible once you have her ability evolved. So definitely a decent buff for Kaisa, but nothing game changing, I would say. Lucian. Lucian's first ability is getting a buff. Cooldown getting reduced by 1 second at each rank. So his poking ability will be better in the laning phase and in general. So a slight buff, which shouldn't matter too much. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna matter too much since it's the first ability. Next one, Master Yi. Master Yi, despite our recent nerfs, Master Yi is still dominating the jungle. To tone down his ability to blaze through jungle camps and quickly burst down his foes during duels, we are slashing some of the attack damage his Alpha Strike grants. At AD ratio, the base damage is increased by, or in the early game it's increased by 5, and then in the later ranks it's nerfed, and the attack damage percentage is getting reduced by 40%, which is actually a huge nerf. This is a huge damage nerf on the first ability. Actually, it's gonna be a huge nerf on Master Yi. That's a huge nerf. It's literally more than 40% because first of all, the base damage is reduced in the late game by 10 base, and then the total attack damage is total attack damage. So if you have like, let's say you have 200 AD, it would do 150 plus 200 attack damage pre-nerf, and then afterwards it would be 120 only if you have 200 AD, for example, just number example. So actually a huge damage nerf, guys. The more AD you have, the weaker Master Yi is. Like his Alpha Strike is gonna scale like shit in comparison. 40% damage nerf on the Alpha Strike. It's huge. Next one, Olaf. Basically they just buffed Olaf by reducing the health cost on the third ability. And that's it. So it's a slight buff. I think Olaf is already broken, and this is not necessarily buffing him significantly, just slightly making his life even easier. So Olaf stays how he was. It's just a slight health cost per usage reduction. But yeah, nothing game changing. 3 HP less health cost. Wow, nice. Rakan, mana per level is getting increased, so he can spam his abilities more. Nothing game changing, it's okay. Sett, now this one is interesting. Sett is currently one of the most dominant fighter champions, so we're dialing back some of his early to mid game power to put him more in line with other Baron laners. Regeneration on the passive is getting reduced per rank from 0.5 to 0.25 and from 2 to 1. Wait. Oh, never mind. In the late game, it's the same. Just in the early game, it's a nerf. Yeah, this will definitely make his sustain weaker in the early game, in the laning phase. So his match or his sustain and his fighting power might be weaker in dueling other Baron laners. On top of that, they're also nerfing the base damage of the first ability by 5 at each rank, which will also hurt him in the early game. So Sett is becoming definitely weaker in the early game. I'm not sure how much weaker. I still think he's gonna be really strong. The regeneration is obviously gonna hurt him because they're halving it in the early game. And minus 5 base damage it's not that much. It's not that much, to be fair. And usually you max the second ability anyways in the early game. Next one, Yuumi. Forget Yuumi. I don't know what they did there. I mean, I read this already, so I know they are buffing Yuumi. I don't understand it. We've been keeping a close eye on this cuddly cat, and she's still struggling to succeed because they're looking at the average win rate across every player, every rank, but they don't look at the win rate at the highest rank. She's becoming way too strong at competitive and in high elo. Yes, she might not be the best in low elo, but you need to make her, I guess, easier to use in low elo than make her even stronger for high elo players. She's becoming way too strong. She's a permaban right now. We're giving her some more opportunities to use her passive and pounce on her foes. Shield. Level scaling is getting buffed and AP ratio is getting buffed, and mana restore. Also more healing, or I mean more mana restore right now, from 12% max mana to 15% max mana. On top of that, the cooldown of the first ability is reduced by 3 seconds in the early game, which is crazy because they're buffing her early game with that. In the late game, it's just 1 second reduction, and the mana cost is reduced by 20 on top of that. So this is a huge buff for Yuumi in the early game, and I don't think she needs it. She's already way too strong in the late game, and her only weakness was that she's kind of punishable in the early game if you don't play her correctly, but this makes it even easier to execute right now. Gameplay changes, items. Banshees Veil is getting buffed. 75 ability power and 15 ability haste is a solid buff. It's definitely gonna make Banshees Veil more viable against a lot of AP compositions for casters. Now Hextech Mega Drive, reducing the total cost by 150. So I guess it's gonna make it more viable for supports to use it, especially if they run like Protobelt to make some plays happen. Yarum's Fist, currently built into an era of items that are primarily geared towards aggressive play, so we're updating its build path to benefit players who prefer a more aggressive start. Ruby Crystal plus 700 gold. Change to Longsword plus 700 gold. Wait, let me check the item really quick, because I'm not sure which one this is right now. Oh, it's this item. It's the component for Starrock's Gauge, for example. Oh, HP. Oh, you're just building it differently, but stats and total price are unchanged. Am I a fan of that? I mean, if you buy a longsword, now you can decide if you buy Yarum's Fist or you get the BF sword, for example, out of it. So itemization wise, it makes it a little bit easier, but it doesn't matter, to be honest. Oh, oh my god. Huh? What the fuck? Yikes. Now, Mortal Reminder, compared to its counterpart, Cerrida's Grudge, Mortal Reminder is underperforming, so they're buffing the attack damage by 5. Not bad. That's not shown. I don't know why it's bugged out when I do this. Anyways, Trinity Force, attack damage increased by 5 and health increased by 50, because Thundera is getting kinda too popular, so they want to make Trinity Force a better option, or a more different option. I think this is gonna buff a lot of champions that like to run Trinity Force, especially junglers that prefer Trinity Force over Thundera, like Lee Sin maybe. And Trinity Force is gonna become really good for like Camille and Fiora as well. Youmus Ghostblade also getting buffed, 3 more armor penetration and ability haste getting buffed by 5. This is a huge buff for assassins that like to run Youmus Ghostblade. So Youmus Ghostblade is gonna become one of the key core items again. So I think this is gonna be pretty good. Jungle, this one is big. You guys might think this is not big, but trust me, this one is a big change. For most of wildrift's lifetime, the jungle meta has resolved around the Rift Scuttler and the immense payout securing one or both of these harmless creatures makes it a must-clear camp for junglers early on. To reduce the overall value of securing these crabs, we are reducing the experience they grant. This should allow junglers to focus on their own camps rather than just tunneling on these neutral objectives. Experience granted reduced from 2000 to 1200, almost a 50% experience nerf. You guys know why this is huge? Because now, pathing wise, junglers have more options. They are not literally forced to fight those scuttles. Because if you don't get the scuttle, that's a huge experience disadvantage. And like those hyper carry, strong early game junglers, if they get 2 scuttles, it's a huge experience advantage. And that's just giving them the lead. So they're like level 6 and you're level 4 because you didn't get scuttle because you're playing a weak early game jungler. But this might change the prioritization of which camps to do and the pathings. You don't necessarily have to go for scuttle anymore. You can instead go for a full clear. So who benefits from those changes? I think Amumu, Shyvana, champions that are weak early game, they don't necessarily want to gank early game. They want to keep farming up and get stronger. These champions will benefit from those changes, and the pathing will also change that you don't have to force every scuttle and flip the game at the first scuttle team fight. But yeah, exciting for these changes because it's gonna change the pathing of junglers and make other junglers more viable. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this review of the patch 3.1b, and write down your feedback down below in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe if you guys enjoyed it, and I see you next time. Bye bye.
Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.